Hey yo, tabletop sports fans. This is Bob from Bob's Tabletop Sports, and we are here with a preview of the red, white, and blue racing short track racing variant that I have been working on. So, a lot of people have been asking me questions about this and wanting to see more information, and I'm going to share a little bit about this in a series of videos, probably three of them. This one will just be kind of going over some of the changes to the components themselves. And then I will do a sample race, just one individual race. And then the third video will be, or that will be the second video, sorry, the sample race. And the third video will be a feature race, kind of show that off, and then kind of going over how the entire score sheet that I have here works as a whole. Okay? So let us go. First of all, look here. This is the prototype board I have here, and this is like far from what the final one is going to look like. But as you can see here, like I have walls of text on here which aren't going to be here in the final. This is going to be like charts and tables and things like that. Right now I just have things kind of spelled out more in this, and some of it's hard to read. It looked good in the computer version, but when I printed it out, it doesn't look as good. It's not readable, especially this red. But I think the rest of it's okay. And my goal was here to kind of like a red section, a white section, a blue section here for the top, middle, and bottom groups here on the racetrack. So let's talk about what this is, what this isn't, first of all. So you may be going, well, you know what? Keith Avalon already has a short track racing variant for red, white, and blue racing, and you'd be right. But that's more geared towards NASCAR racing, the old pioneer days of NASCAR racing. And it's great. I think that it's an awesome thing, and especially with all the beach racing and all that other stuff that kind of goes with it. Some of the dirt tracks that they used to race on back in the day, and also the short tracks that they raced on in the day. Things were a little bit different. But this is for real short track racing as far as like the local short track racing you might go to at your in your hometown maybe or near your hometown. Okay, so these are around here we have Slinger Speedway, which is a quarter-mile track, right? And it's a dirt track, and you can go there and get all sorts of dirt all over you if you sit in the grandstands, and it's a lot of fun. Um, and they race with cars that you can see here on this mat here. We have two sprint cars here. Actually, well, these are midgets. So you can see they'd be cars that might be similar to this, or they could be super modified cars. They could even be late model stock cars. Okay, but really, what this is about is where they have small groups of cars out on the track at one time, not 40 cars like in the full game, where we're playing a NASCAR race. This is more where they have maybe 10, 15, 20 cars out on the track at one time. They race in what they call heats. So there's usually 3, 4, or 5 heats. And the top drivers from each heat will make the feature race for the night. And the ones that were like maybe near the top but didn't finish in the top, they might get a chance to go to the what they call the second chance race or the B main, where they can then possibly still earn a spot in the feature race in the back of the pack. Okay, and then the night culminates with a feature race, which is usually a few laps longer. And those are the drivers. The top drivers from that race are the ones that earn points for the week. Everybody else doesn't earn anything in the standings. Okay, that's kind of how that goes. All right. So this is the other thing that I should say that this isn't going to model any professional series. So I'm not going to make cards for this for World of Outlaws or any of the NASCAR or sponsored series for short track racing or anything like that. This is really more of a fictional type of universe. Okay, so and the reason that is that I wanted to kind of blend all of the different types of short track racing there are. There's people who do just dirt track racing. There's people that do just asphalt short track racing. There's people who do figure eight racing, and that's a whole different thing, right? Um, when you have people trying to not hit each other in the intersection of a figure eight. Okay, so there's that, right? So I wanted to kind of mix all of those experiences into one type of game and one type of series, okay, where they can race on all these different types of tracks. So as far as this is the track here, and so like I said, only 20 cars are going to be in each race. Actually, let's go with this first. I'm going to go. This is the score sheet that will be used for the game. So we have a section here for qualifying. And the qualifying is going to work exactly the same as it does for red, white, and blue racing. Okay, you're going to all qualify. There's going to be quote-unquote TV drivers. I'll get into a small difference in that in a second. And then you're going to have your fast drivers, your slow drivers, and they're going to be qualifying in the top, middle, bottom, and also the bubble stack and stuff like that. The things that you already know how to do. The one difference on this is that we're going to have, instead of TV drivers, they're going to be called hometown drivers. And instead of randomly determining which drivers are going to be the quote-unquote TV drivers for that week by randomly drawing them, instead they're going to be pre-chosen each week based on the track card. So you can see here's a sample track card and very small print here, and I don't know if you can see this, but it says home to, and it has a list of drivers there. Okay, those are going to be the drivers that week that are going to get a certain advantage on the track. Okay, now currently I'm using the short track Pioneers set rules for the TV drivers, for that to do that part of the qualifying, but I'm actually going to be working on a separate TV drivers, but in this time hometown drivers chart that they would roll on, which would have more short track type things happening, and then they could possibly go to, instead of a TV interview chart, it would be where they would be doing an interview over the track intercom track PA system to the crowd, instead, to the local guys that know them and love them well. A lot of them that probably even raced against them in local events, right? So the reason that I wanted to have this is that there are certain drivers, these drivers come from these tracks, and they know these tracks really well because they have practiced on these tracks during their early years of racing. This is really where they cut their teeth, and so they really know the ins and outs of the track. They know every rut in the track, every little bit of the turns of the track, and how to handle them properly, more so than anybody else coming into that track otherwise. Okay, so they're going to get a slight advantage over the other drivers. Okay. All right, so then once we have this qualifying grid set, then we're going to basically take that pile and divide it into three different piles. So you take the first, the fourth, the seventh, and so on drivers, and keep and they will go in the first heat. So every third driver would go into heat one. Every second driver would go into heat two, and so on and so forth. Right. So every three, one goes here, one goes there, one goes there, until you fill up the three heats. You'd run these. Top four drivers are going to make the feature race in the first 12 positions in the feature race, which is this last race here. I'm going to just kind of flip this over here. And then the next six drivers are going to make it to the second chance race, where they'll get to race. And if they make it in the top eight, they'll fill in the last 8 positions of that feature race. And that's how it goes. And so that kind of gives you an idea how the whole weekend goes down. So, like I said, these are real short races. These are only 10-lap races, these heat races. Second chance races, 10 laps. And then the feature race will be determined by whatever track and event they're running. So they run anywhere from 15 to about 30 laps, I think, at the maximum. Okay? All right. So, and limited cars, up to 20 cars per race. So for this, I'm just going to put this over here. You can see here, so we have a top middle, and bottom group, and they're a lot smaller than what you are probably used to, right? Especially the middle group here. Normally that is going to be a 12-car group, and this time it's only 6. We don't have the odd or even here. We just have 6 drivers. And also the bottom group is numbered. Okay, so they have drivers 1 through 6 in here as well. Okay, so when you select somebody from the bottom group, they can, there's reasons that we'd have to roll random drivers up here as well for different things, okay? There's also a 20th spot here. They're technically part of the bottom group, but they aren't going to be subject to some of those events that happen, okay? Likewise, we have a leader here that is technically part of the top group, but again, sometimes they may not be subject to certain checks and things like that, okay? All right. So, special board here, that's the one thing here. This is, again, something that's going to change greatly, this bottom part. But really the important thing is the new track layout, okay? Other thing you're going to need is new tracks and cars, okay? So, first of all, let's take a look at the cars. So, I took some of the cars from the Scram series, and I also added a few extra drivers for my own as well. But you can see here, here's a few examples of some of these drivers, and I made them look like these little midget cars. So the overhead is basically these. But what I wanted to prove with this, and this is actually one of my personal cars. This is not one of the cars from the Scram set, but what I wanted to prove by taking the Scram cars was that I could convert a Scram driver into an actual short track driver really easily, okay? And the way that that's done is we took the driver themselves, we reduced their escape by 1 rating, first of all. The logistics rating is the pit rating, or the pit stop rating, or whatever pit stop rating, where you roll for the blue chips. We call that logistics in here, and I'll explain that why that is in a moment here. There's still the trophy rating. I just use a square for this because I'm lazy and didn't want to put an actual trophy on there. Okay, but reflex, control, skill, and star are all going to be the same. Okay, no changes there whatsoever. Okay, and then I got rid of heat and smart. Okay, so for the heat rating, I changed that into nerves. So that's just a name change. It's a nomenclature change. So if they had heat, they now have nerves. Okay. The other thing I added, and this guy just flew away. Whoops, Julie Justice just flew away. And I don't have any of the drivers out here that did this, so let me just pull someone up here. Here's Clark Snook. So Clark Snook, Clark Snook had Smart originally. So you can see here where Smart is, used to be, it now says Asphalt. Okay. Vic Holder, instead of Smart, has something that says Dirt. So drivers can now either specialize in dirt or asphalt. So to convert your drivers, you just basically roll a decider die. If it's true, they'd be an asphalt driver. If it's false, then it would be a dirt driver. Instead, these are only for drivers that originally had Smart, and that's how you convert them over. Okay, so the conversion process is super simple to make these drivers into something else, okay? So they can use that then on their racetrack. So here's an example of a racetrack. This is called Whiskey Corners Raceway. And so they hold 2 races their year, Suncoast Capital Clash and the Gulf Oil 50. And you can see here, the top looks pretty much the same, although wait a second, there's a huge difference here for bottom group. We added a 5 and a 6 for the bottom group. So how do duels happen and stuff like that? Well, we'll talk about that in the second video where I talk about the differences in the race day procedures, or the actual race procedures. But just kind of suffice it to say that 5 and 6 is always going to be rolling the bottom group now instead. So every group now has an even chance of being represented in this game. Okay? Other things you'll notice, there's no problem results in here because problems are going to come up enough during the actual race procedures, as you'll see again, when I do the second video. That doesn't need to be on the card. Okay. Trebles tend to come up a little bit more. As you can see here, that's listed as a 5 on a 5. So they do come up a lot more. These races do tend to have a lot more attrition. And this is actually one of the more dangerous tracks. Um, this is actually a dirt oval, a quarter-mile dirt oval. So it is going to be a little bit more dangerous. Okay. You also notice here on here we have dirt being called here. You won't notice asphalt on here. So dirt drivers are going to be set. Drivers that don't have the dirt attribute, so drivers like Clark Snook, who are asphalt drivers, they're going to suffer a little bit on this track. Okay. And also you can see here number 10, home. So that's when the hometown drivers go, just like TV drivers. Okay, so we're just restating that in there. Okay. And what I did was I created a bunch of tracks. Basically, I recreated the Northern Lights Motor Dome and kind of calibrated it to this game. But otherwise, these are all original tracks and original names I created for this. And so you can see some of the different tracks. We have Speedway of Champions. This is actually a fairly large asphalt oval. It's a half mile, which for these cars, that's a pretty big track, right? Let's see if some interesting ones here. All right, so here we go. Here's a Dixie Crossroads Speedway. Now this is a 38-mile length asphalt figure eight. So this is actually a figure eight track. And on this one is a special thing, a special boutique thing. And actually all of the figure eights have this. It says on trouble results, if a car fails its escape roll, roll for a random car in the group behind it, or top group for the bottom group, and have it make an escape roll as well to see if they collided in the crossover. Okay, so these tracks are going to be a lot more dangerous. In fact, trouble happens on a 6 on these, so these are, like I said, there's going to be a lot of accidents. Okay, when we talk about race day, though, we'll explain some of the differences when it comes to things where for yellow flags and stuff like that, because in short track racing they don't always yellow flag when somebody crashes. Okay, sometimes they just keep racing, especially figure eight tracks. They let them go until there's a good pileup somewhere. Okay, and then if they do get to a situation where they're going to put out a yellow flag, essentially they're just going to stop them. So they usually use a red flag, stop the race, get everything reset. So that gets accounted for in this as well. All right, so this is pretty much it for this video. I just wanted to kind of give you some examples of some of the cars and see what they look like. And these are just some examples here. Some of the drivers: Austin Bigler, Evan Utek here. So he's an asphalt driver here. Here's another dirt driver, Kurt Bryson. One other thing before we go, actually, I wanted to describe on these cards the difference between logistics and pit rating, because these cars don't do pit stops during their races. Okay, so that is one very important component of this game, is that because there's no pit stops, you're relying more on the car logistics and stuff like that, and then also the car quality. So this what's normally the pit rating, the A, B, or C, which is used for repair rolls, things like that, is actually used more for determining if there's trouble with the car. We'll see that in the next video, of course. But that really goes down to car quality. Okay, so is this a good quality car? Is it not so good quality car? These cars all here are all great quality cars, actually. They're all A's and B's, which I don't know how I pulled out all the best drivers here. Yeah, here's a bad one. Neil Wallach. Here we go. He's got an E. So he's not driving in the best vehicle right there. And Monica Merrick here, she's driving in like an average car, okay, with a C. But that goes to the quality. Logistics is more what do they have on hand to get the car prepped and ready for the track and everything like that. Are they hauling the car on a trailer in the open, or they got a nice closed trailer? Is it just this guy and maybe a friend of his that are fixing the car, or does he have a group of friends that comes down to help him every week when he races? Are they helping with repairs? Are they helping set the car up? Are they do they have a lot of good mechanical knowledge to dial the car in and know when they have to make certain adjustments to, say, the suspension of the car, things like that. So that's all kind of rolled into that logistics rating. Okay. So the way that that translates into the game, which you'll see tomorrow, is that cars that are higher quality are going to experience less problems. Okay, cars that are set up really well are going to get advantages when trying to get blue chips and other things like that. Okay, so that's kind of how that all translates into the game. But anyways, this is an intro. The next video will be going into more detail as to what the game, how this game actually plays for over just one of the heat. We're going to just do a heat race. So 10-lap race, simple heat race. We're going to line up a bunch of cars. I'm actually, after this video is done, I'm going to do a full qualifying with the cars here for this set, which is mostly scram drivers, with a few thrown in. I'm going to do a full qualifying, and I'll show you the results of that qualifying, and I'll show you what the heat races are, and we'll run one of those heat races. Okay, and then I'm going to go through, as we do that heat race, I'm going to go through the differences in how this game plays, because this is really where you're going to see how this game is different than a game of red, white, and blue racing. It takes a lot of the same concepts that are in red, white, blue racing, and it's definitely necessary to own red, white, and blue racing in order to use this. This is not a game to compete with it. It's a game, it's basically an expansion for the game. So you definitely need to own the game in order to play this. That part should be very important. But this is just basically an expansion to the game, or an alternate way to play the game. Okay, so and this is not ever something that's going to be sold or anything like that. This is just something that I'm doing, and we'll see if it ever gets offered to the public. If it doesn't, at least you guys can see kind of what my thought process is in this, and you can design your own versions of this as well. So, take a look at this and see what you think, and leave your comments down below. If you liked this video, please make sure you like and subscribe and all that good stuff that everybody tells you to do on every YouTube video that you ever see. And if you really like this, share this video and get this out to other people so they can kind of see what this is all about. And leave your comments either here or anywhere that this is posted, say in Facebook or whatever. I will try to get back to you with some answers, as far as what I can provide you at this point. All right. So thank you very much for watching and taking a look at this, and we will see you in the next video.